Jonathan Reed had always held the conviction that reaching the pinnacle of success demanded a sacrifice. Ceaseless gatherings, organizational choices, and the unrelenting strain to uphold his dominion. As the leader of one of the largest investment firms in New York, his calendar brimmed with negotiations, media engagements, and opportunities for business growth. Today, after many years, he strolled slowly through Central Park, savoring a rare moment of solitude amid the tumult of his high-profile existence. The afternoon sun stretched its rays, creating elongated shadows on the pavement, while the brisk autumn air wafted the earthy aroma of fallen leaves. Individuals meandered through the scene, absorbed in their own thoughts. Some were jogging, while others occupied benches, engrossed in literature or deep discussions. Jonathan continued his stroll, hands nestled in the pockets of his finely crafted coat, his thoughts swirling with plans for impending negotiations and strategic maneuvers. As he neared a quaint playground, he decelerated, observing the children darting about with a vitality he hadn't experienced in ages. The sound of laughter echoed as children scaled the monkey bars and glided down vibrant slides. At that moment, he caught sight of a small boy by the swings, gazing at him with a look of wonder. A young boy, perhaps 6 or 7 years of age, sported tousled brown hair and donned a hoodie that was a tad too big for him, with the sleeves gathered around his tiny hands. He appeared uncertain initially, as if weighing his options about whether to say something, but then he moved swiftly toward Jonathan, gazing up at him with a blend of enthusiasm and recognition. "Greetings, sir," the boy stated, his voice resonating with clarity and assurance. Jonathan halted, taken by surprise. He found it unusual for strangers, particularly children, to approach him with such ease. In his world, individuals either engaged with him through measured civility or steered clear entirely, daunted by his imposing presence. Jonathan surveyed his surroundings, anticipating the presence of a parent or guardian, yet the boy remained solitary. Indeed, he responded, his tone more formal than he had meant it to be. The young lad beamed with delight. "My mother carries a photo of you in her purse." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, his curiosity ignited. He didn't possess the fame of actors or athletes. Certainly, his visage might pop up from time to time in business publications or financial reports, yet he questioned whether he was the type of individual someone would keep a photo of in their wallet. "Oh," he remarked, bending down a bit to connect with the boy's eyes. "Why does she possess my picture?" The boy shrugged, conveying that the answer was self-evident. "She claims you transformed her existence." Jonathan experienced an unusual flutter in his chest, a feeling that was entirely new to him. It wasn't the typical thrill of sealing $1 million agreement or the gratification of outsmarting a rival. This was unique, an unforeseen intimacy. He observed the boy intently for a brief moment. "May I ask what your name is?" Ryan responded promptly, the boy's words flowing effortlessly. "Ryan Lopez." Jonathan gave a slight nod. "What about your mom? What is her name?" Ryan paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face as he weighed his response. "She advised against conversing with unfamiliar faces," he confessed, yet a smile returned to his lips. "However, I don't believe you're a bad person. Your shoes are quite stylish." Jonathan couldn't help but chuckle, his gaze drifting to his polished leather shoes, which likely cost more than what some earned in a month. "Well, Ryan, I assure you I'm not a bad person," he stated. "I'm curious about why your mom believes I've had a significant impact on her life." Ryan bit his lip in contemplation. "Occasionally, she shares her tales with me, reflecting on her younger years. She often remarks that without that man, she can't imagine where she would be today." Jonathan's thoughts whirled, searching for the moment he might have encountered Ryan's mother. Throughout the years, he collaborated with thousands of employees, participated in numerous charity events, and offered guidance to many budding entrepreneurs. Yet, he couldn't recall anyone by the name of Lopez who would cling to his likeness so tightly. Before he could inquire further, a woman's voice rang out. "Ryan?" Jonathan glanced over to spot a woman approaching them, her stride brisk yet composed. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, with dark brown hair pulled back into a loose ponytail and eyes that reflected a blend of fatigue and resilience. She donned a modest coat, her scarf snugly fastened around her neck to fend off the chill. As soon as her gaze locked with Jonathan's, she paused for a brief moment. Subtly apparent, yet Jonathan picked up on it. A glimmer of familiarity, astonishment, and an elusive feeling he couldn't fully identify. "Mother?" Ryan dashed toward her, seizing her hand. "This is the individual depicted in your image." The woman's complexion faded a touch as her eyes darted between her son and Jonathan. "Ryan," she said softly as she knelt beside him, "we discussed the importance of not approaching strangers. Remember?" Ryan sulked. "Yet he is not unfamiliar." "You're familiar with him." Jonathan moved ahead, presenting a subtle smile. "It appears I find myself at a disadvantage in this situation," he remarked, his tone playful yet inquisitive. "It seems I've had a significant impact on your life. I would be eager to learn the details." The woman paused, her teeth grazing her lip in uncertainty. A hush fell over the scene, punctuated solely by the faint echoes of laughter from other children playing in the distance. Finally, she inhaled deeply and spoke. "You may not recall me, Mr. Reed, but I certainly remember you." The way she articulated her words sent a rush of adrenaline through Jonathan, quickening his pulse. A narrative lingered in the air, a bond he had overlooked, yet one that unmistakably influenced the course of this woman's existence. He felt an inexplicable urge to uncover more details. Before she could utter another word, Ryan pulled at her sleeve. "Mom, is it time for us to go now? A wave of hunger washes over me." She looked down at him and gave a slight nod. "Absolutely, my dear." Then, glancing back at Jonathan, she gave a slight, nearly remorseful smile. "It was a pleasure to see you again, Mr. Reed." Jonathan observed her as she pivoted and strolled away, her son's tiny hand firmly held in hers. He had the option to let her slip away, to brush off the entire experience as merely another fleeting interaction in the endless tide of faces he met daily. Yet there was something about this woman, her words and her expression, that lingered in his mind. As she vanished among the throng, Jonathan retrieved his phone. He directed his assistant to uncover all available information regarding a woman named Lopez. She could have been employed by me years back. He concluded the conversation and tucked the phone away, his eyes lingering on the place where the woman had been. He sensed, inexplicably, that this encounter was not the final chapter in their story. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Jonathan Reed reclined in the back seat of his sleek black town car, navigating the bustling streets of Manhattan. The city buzzed with its familiar frenzy, horns honking, people darting through crosswalks, neon lights shimmering against the glass skyscrapers that adorned the streets. For the first time in ages, his thoughts drifted away from business transactions and the ups and downs of the stock market. Instead, his mind kept returning to the boy in Central Park and the woman who had gazed at him as if he were a specter from her history. He had constructed his existence on the foundation of control, making certain that each action he took was intentional and measured. In mere moments, a tiny voice had utterly disrupted his equilibrium with just one simple statement. "My mother carries a photograph of you in her purse." The idea remained in the air. Rarely did individuals beyond his career sphere hold onto his likeness. He wasn't a celebrity, an artist, or a public figure. He was a businessman, undeniably powerful, yet hardly the type of individual one would cherish a photograph of unless it held profound personal significance. The way that woman, Ryan's mother, had regarded him with a mix of hesitation and an unspoken depth hinted at a narrative waiting to be uncovered. His phone vibrated in his pocket, and he retrieved it, responding without glancing at the caller ID. "What do you have for me?" he inquired, fully aware that his assistant, Mark Benson, had already begun his research. Mark confessed, his fingers rhythmically dancing across the keyboard in the background, that she was quite elusive. The surname Lopez is quite prevalent, and without a given name, it feels akin to hunting for a needle amidst a vast haystack. However, I did come across something that could be pertinent. Jonathan leaned in a bit, his intrigue growing stronger. Proceed. Mark continued, mentioning an Emily Lopez who had interned at Reed Financial around 8 years prior. She participated in the summer program, standing out as one of the leading candidates. However, she never moved into a lasting position. No documentation of termination, just vanished. It was as if she vanished without a trace. Jonathan scowled. The name didn't instantly ring a bell, yet he had guided and employed countless individuals throughout the years. Some remained in the field while others chose a different path. It was not unusual for interns to venture into various career trajectories. Gather all the information you can, he commanded. Her current location, her activities, and the reasons for her departure. Mark responded promptly, already on it. I will share the details with you as soon as they become available. Jonathan hung up the phone, his gaze drifting to the window as the car drew nearer to his towering residence. His office occupied the 58th floor, a space meticulously crafted to embody the triumph he had achieved through relentless effort. As he ascended in the elevator, a surprising clarity washed over him. For the first time in years, his thoughts were not consumed by the empire he had constructed. He found himself lost in thoughts of a girl who had once been part of his life, only to disappear without a trace. Upon arriving at his office, he found an email from Mark patiently awaiting his attention. He opened it with a click, swiftly scanning the information. Emily Lopez, 34 years old, a mother raising her child alone. At present, I am employed at a modest accounting firm located in Brooklyn. Lacks a significant presence on social media platforms. There is no history of criminal activity. Nothing outrageous. Simply mundane. Still, there was an unsettling feeling about it. She was an everyday woman. What was the reason behind her keeping his picture? What made her express to her son that he transformed her existence? A knock at the door broke the flow of his thoughts. Hannah, his executive assistant, entered the room with a pile of files in her hands. Text. She placed the documents on his desk and gently reminded him that his 3 o'clock meeting was just 15 minutes away. Jonathan acknowledged with a distracted nod. Hannah, do you recall an intern by the name of Emily Lopez from 8 years back? Hannah took a moment to reflect. Is it Lopez? That name rings a bell. I believe she was part of the finance department, correct? She possessed intelligence and a strong work ethic. Yet, she departed unexpectedly. No one truly understood the reason behind it. Jonathan's eyes focused intently. Departed unexpectedly? Hannah gave a slight nod. Absolutely. One moment she was present, and then she vanished. Whispers circulated about her having some personal struggles. Yet nothing was substantiated. HR kept it brief, simply stating that she wouldn't be returning. There was an unsettling feeling within him about that. Individuals didn't simply vanish from organizations without cause. Emily Lopez had clearly kept him in her thoughts, especially since she was still holding on to his picture after all this time. In a moment of spontaneity, he arrived at a choice. Cancel my 3 o'clock, he said, pulling on his coat. Hannah arched an eyebrow. Are you looking to cancel? How are you holding up? I just need to take care of something, he said, already making his way to the elevator. Shortly thereafter, he found himself once more in the back seat of his car, relaying an address in Brooklyn to his driver. He found himself questioning the reason behind his actions. Why did he feel this sudden urge to find her, to grasp what had transpired all those years back? Yet an inner voice whispered to him that this held significance. He simply couldn't walk away from it. The journey to Brooklyn took longer than he anticipated, and as the vehicle navigated through the borough's simpler neighborhoods, Jonathan experienced an unusual feeling of detachment. His universe was constructed within the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan, amidst billion-dollar transactions and fierce power dynamics. Yet, in this place, everything felt more straightforward. Markets adorned with artisanal signs, children laughing and playing on the streets, families strolling home with bundles of vibrant, fresh fruits and vegetables. He pondered the role Emily played in this world now. As the car came to a halt in front of a quaint brick office building, he paused for a fleeting moment before making his exit. The office was hushed, with only a handful of employees diligently focused at their desks. A receptionist glanced up, taken aback by the unexpected entrance of a man clad in a luxurious suit. "How may I assist you?" she inquired, regarding him with a hint of intrigue. "I'm searching for Emily Lopez," Jonathan stated, his tone steady yet assertive. The receptionist paused, casting a wary look toward the rear of the office. "She is currently engaged in a meeting. May I take a message?" Jonathan gave a slight shake of his head. "I shall remain patient." Time seemed to elongate endlessly. He was unaccustomed to the act of waiting. It was others who typically waited for him, not the reverse. At last, the door at the end of the hall creaked open, revealing a figure I recognized all too well. Emily Lopez. She halted instantly upon seeing him, her eyes expanding in disbelief. For a moment, it seemed as though she would pivot and return to her office without a second thought. Yet, she straightened her posture and cautiously moved ahead. "Mr. Reed," she spoke with careful hesitation. Jonathan observed her, recognizing the remnants of the youthful intern she had once been, yet also the burden of time that had transformed her. "Emily," he stated plainly, "it's time for a conversation. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends." Emily's heart raced as she found herself in the center of the cramped office, her gaze fixed on the man she hadn't encountered in years. Jonathan Reed stood right there, larger than life, exuding the same power and command she recalled so vividly. A torrent of thoughts surged through her mind all at once. What brought him to this place? How did he come across her? And above all, what was it that he desired after all this time? The office surrounding her blurred into insignificance, the cacophony of ringing phones and clattering keyboards transforming into mere background hum. Her heart raced within her chest as she inhaled deeply and willed herself to maintain a calm facade. She had transformed from the naive intern of years past. She had crafted a life and discovered a strength within herself that she never realized existed. Yet, facing him once more unearthed memories she had long concealed. Jonathan observed her intently, his piercing blue eyes probing her expression for the responses she was not prepared to reveal. He had spent the whole drive contemplating what he would express to her, yet now that she stood before him, he found himself at a loss for words. The quiet lingered in the air until Emily broke the stillness with her words. "What brings you here?" Her voice carried a sense of calm and control, yet he could detect a subtle tension lurking beneath the surface. Jonathan breathed out slowly and moved in a bit closer, softening his tone to ensure that no one else in the office could catch his words. "I had the pleasure of meeting your son." The words lingered in the atmosphere, laden with unexpressed significance. Emily's breath hitched for a brief moment, yet she swiftly regained her composure, her expression inscrutable. "Ryan," she said gently, her voice now a whisper. "I assumed as much." She folded her arms, creating an invisible wall between them. "What was it that he said that prompted you to seek me out after all this time?" Jonathan's lips formed a tight, straight line. He could feel the barrier she was erecting, the subtle resistance in her stance. He uttered a remark that piqued my interest. He hesitated, the words that had been resonating in his mind since then lingering on his lips. "Hello, sir. My mother carries a picture of you in her purse." He noticed the way her body tensed, how her fingers curled slightly as though she had been taken by surprise. Yet, as swiftly as the feeling danced upon her features, it vanished, leaving behind that familiar, protective expression. Emily exhaled softly and averted her gaze, as though she were collecting her reflections. "That's unexpected," she acknowledged, yet chose not to expand further. She remained silent on the matter, neither affirming nor refuting it, and provided no clarification. Jonathan advanced another step, his voice dropping further still. "What is it about Emily?" His voice carried a subtle strength, marked by a quiet intensity. "What's the reason behind having a picture of me all these years later?" Emily gazed at him, then truly examined him, as if weighing the extent of her revelations. At last, she gave a slight shake of her head and released a quiet, humorless chuckle. It seems that the memories have slipped away from you, haven't they? Jonathan furrowed his brow, perplexed by the enigmatic reply. What should I recall? Emily paused briefly before speaking again, her voice firm yet tinged with an underlying fragility, revealing a hidden depth. 8 years back, I found myself as an intern at Reed Financial. In my youth, filled with ambition, I believed that through relentless effort, I could forge a promising future for myself. She let out a breath, her gaze dropping to the floor before returning to him. And then, on a seemingly ordinary day, everything transformed. I have recently received an offer for a full-time position. It was the culmination of all my efforts. However, I soon discovered that I was expecting. Jonathan experienced a sudden surge of energy coursing through him. That took him by surprise. Expecting, he reiterated, his thoughts racing to connect the dots. Emily nodded, her eyes unwavering. I was at a loss for what to do next. Fear enveloped me in solitude. I found myself without anyone in my corner. And then I was summoned to a meeting. She halted, her gaze probing his. A gathering with you. Jonathan's thoughts surged as he attempted to remember the moment she referred to. He had conducted numerous meetings throughout the years. Before he had the chance to speak, she pressed on. You were not acquainted with me on a personal level. To you, I was merely another intern. That day, you transformed my life without even knowing it. Jonathan's throat was parched. What have I done? Emily's lips formed a delicate, nearly nostalgic smile. In a hurry, you sifted through resumes, making swift decisions. You inquired about my motivation for wanting to join Reed Financial, and I shared with you my genuine narrative, the true narrative. I mentioned that I lacked a safety net, that this position was my sole opportunity for a brighter future. And then you surprised me in a way I could never have anticipated. You paused, gazed at me for a lingering moment and said, "We all begin our journey somewhere. Diligence merits an opportunity." Jonathan sensed his breath hitch. It resonated as something he might express, yet comprehension eluded him. I do not. Emily interrupted him softly. You granted approval for my full-time position despite my pregnancy. People warned me that firms wouldn't take a risk on single mothers, claiming I'd never find a job in finance. Yet you did. You weren't fully aware of my circumstances, yet you still offered me an opportunity. And that opportunity transformed everything. Jonathan experienced an odd, unfamiliar constriction in his chest. He couldn't remember that conversation, yet he trusted her completely. It resonated with his essence, his conviction in diligence, his intuition to identify promise. Yet he had never considered the far-reaching effects of those choices, how they could determine whether someone like Emily experienced stability or faced hardship. Emily let out a soft sigh, her gaze drifting momentarily before she pressed on. I held on to that picture of you because, in a sense, you transformed into a beacon of hope for me. In moments of struggle and self-doubt, I would reflect on the fact that there was someone who recognized my potential. She released a gentle laugh. I certainly didn't anticipate my son would reveal it to you right there in Central Park. Jonathan exhaled, surprised to find he had been holding his breath. He arrived seeking clarity, and now that he possessed it, he sensed a transformation within himself. He felt uncertain about how to articulate a response to something so profoundly intimate. He finally confessed, I had no idea. Emily gave a slight nod. I understand. I refrained from making contact for that reason. I never sought anything from you, Jonathan. I crafted my existence independently. Your actions truly made a difference, and I wanted to express that to you. Jonathan experienced an unfamiliar sensation within him, a sudden rupture of emotions he had never encountered before. He devoted his existence to striking bargains, constructing a legacy, and concentrating on the forthcoming breakthrough. Yet amidst everything, he had never paused to consider the fleeting moments, the ones that could transform a person's life without him even being aware of it. He gazed at Emily, truly gazed at her, and for the first time in years, he experienced something that transcended the realm of commerce. A bond with the authentic, the deeply human. Thank you for sharing that, he replied, his voice now softer. Emily offered him a gentle smile. It was my pleasure. After what felt like ages, Jonathan Reed found himself without a plan. Yet he understood one thing. This was not the conclusion of the tale. Before you leave, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Jonathan sat in his car outside the modest office building in Brooklyn, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the steering wheel, as he mentally revisited the conversation with Emily again and again. He entered that office anticipating a straightforward explanation, perhaps even an uncomfortable interaction, but what he encountered was something much deeper. He had always viewed himself as a person of reason, someone who engaged with figures, plans, and outcomes. Yet today, after what felt like an eternity, he confronted the burden of something entirely unrelated to his work, the unintended influence he had on another person's life. He reminisced about that moment 8 years prior, seated at the head of a conference table, sifting through countless files, and making quick decisions. He couldn't recall Emily's face from that time, nor her personal narrative, yet she had held onto his words as if they were a beacon in the shadows. It disturbed him in a manner he couldn't fully articulate. How many other choices had he casually made that had altered someone's path? Had he missed those who could have benefited from even a hint of faith? The blare of a passing vehicle jolted him from his reverie, and he let out a deep sigh before finally shifting his car into drive. He had intended to head back to his office, dive into his tasks, and allow reason to guide him once more, yet he unexpectedly found himself navigating toward another area of the city. The towering skyline of Manhattan rose majestically in the distance as he maneuvered through the bustling streets, his mind a chaotic swirl of thoughts. Before he even grasped his destination, he found himself parked in front of a quaint little bookstore on the Lower East Side, a spot he hadn't frequented in years. He entered, the comforting aroma of aged books and freshly brewed coffee enveloping him as he surveyed his surroundings. This shop had served as a refuge during his formative years, a sanctuary from the unyielding demands of the financial realm while he was in the process of constructing his empire. Years had slipped by without a visit, yet today stirred a longing within him for the peace this place offered. As he meandered through the aisles, his gaze landed on a section he had previously overlooked. Personal growth, tales of resilience, and life stories of individuals who triumphed against all odds. His fingers glided over a book titled The Power of Small Decisions, and without a second thought, he drew it from the shelf. He examined it closely, glancing over the words that spoke of how seemingly trivial decisions could influence the course of entire lives. It resonated profoundly within him. Engrossed in his musings, he hardly registered the soft voice that emerged next to him. "Hey, you're the person from Central Park." Jonathan turned, taken aback, and there stood Ryan, Emily's son, beside him with wide, inquisitive eyes. The boy grasped a book on space exploration tightly, treating it like a cherished treasure. His pure enthusiasm brought a smile to Jonathan's face, even with the burdens he carried in his thoughts. "Ah, if it isn't Ryan," he remarked, bending down a bit to align with the boy's gaze. "What brings you here?" Ryan smiled broadly. "My mother has a deep affection for literature, which is why we frequent this place often." He cast a fleeting look at the book held by Jonathan. "That seems quite dull." Jonathan let out a soft laugh. "So, which one do you think is superior, this or your book about space?" Ryan's expression brightened. "Absolutely, the cosmos." In 1969, Neil Armstrong made history as the first individual to set foot on the moon. However, there are those who believe it was fabricated. He expressed himself with a fervor that only the young can truly embody. His hands gestured expressively as he delved into the conspiracy theories he had picked up on. Jonathan found himself chuckling uncontrollably. "What an intriguing discussion. Which perspective do you support?" Ryan furrowed his brow in contemplation. "I believe it's genuine. However, I would still prefer to experience space firsthand to confirm it for myself." Jonathan found himself captivated by the boy's inquisitive nature. He had encountered numerous adults who didn't possess the same ambition this kid exhibited. He could perceive the unwavering resolve in Emily's son, a reflection of her own tenacity. It prompted him to reflect on the extent to which Ryan's aspirations were shaped by the challenges his mother had endured. To what extent had Emily's strength been inherited by her child? Just as he was about to speak again, Emily emerged from behind a shelf, clutching several books in her hands. As soon as her eyes landed on Jonathan, she momentarily halted, a fleeting pause before regaining her composure. "Jonathan," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with astonishment. "I was surprised to find you here." Jonathan stood, returning the book he had chosen to its place on the shelf. "I might express a similar sentiment." Emily cast a quick look at Ryan, who continued to radiate joy. "Ryan, why not choose another book?" The boy nodded enthusiastically and dashed away, leaving the two adults in a palpable silence that hung in the air. At last, Emily let out a deep sigh. "Reflect on what transpired earlier. I didn't intend to unload all of that on you." Jonathan gave a slight shake of his head. "I'm really pleased you took that step. I required that affirmation." He paused before adding, "It dawned on me how rarely I've considered the lasting impacts of the decisions I've taken." Emily observed him intently for a moment. "Jonathan, you've created something remarkable. Your choices have influenced entire sectors. It's unrealistic to think you'll recall every intern who passed through your doors." He let out a breath, running a hand through his hair. "Perhaps not. However, that doesn't imply I shouldn't strive to be more conscious." He cast a look at Ryan, who was now animatedly presenting his book to the cashier. "He's an intelligent young man. He possesses your passion." Emily's demeanor became gentler. "He aspires to achieve something monumental. I truly wish to provide him with the resources he needs to reach that destination." Jonathan locked eyes with her. "You already are." A silent understanding lingered in the air between them, a serene recognition and acceptance of both history and the current moment. For the first time, Jonathan sensed a transformation within him, a feeling that had been concealed beneath years of negotiations and corporate maneuvers. As Ryan returned with a bounce, clutching his new book with pride, Jonathan found himself uttering words he hadn't intended to say. "Ryan, would you be interested in coming by my office sometime? Explore the inner workings of the corporate landscape." Ryan's eyes grew large with surprise. "Is that so? That would be absolutely fantastic." Emily gazed at Jonathan, her surprise evident, yet her expression remained unwavering. "Your kindness is truly appreciated." Jonathan gave a slight shrug, a smile playing on his lips as he looked at the boy, simply repaying the kindness. As he exited the bookstore that day, an unmistakable sense of change lingered in the air. He had devoted years to the pursuit of power, success, and influence. Perhaps, just perhaps, true success isn't defined solely by riches. Perhaps it resided in the subtle instances, the ones that molded existence in ways beyond anyone's foresight. Before moving on, please subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Jonathan perched in his office high above the bustling streets of Manhattan, gazing out at the vibrant city that had served as the canvas for his achievements. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline in shades of gold, yet his thoughts wandered far from the breathtaking scene before him. His mind wandered repeatedly to the young child filled with endless wonder and his mother, whose strength had seen her through challenges beyond his comprehension. He had extended an invitation to Ryan, half anticipating that Emily would hesitate, perhaps even decline politely, but to his astonishment, she had accepted. A few days later, they were set to visit his office. He had always approached meetings with confidence. He had finalized billion-dollar agreements, engaged in discussions with global leaders, and faced some of the most influential figures in the industry with unwavering composure. As he awaited the arrival of Emily and Ryan, he caught himself fiddling with his tie, pacing back and forth in his office, and glancing at his watch repeatedly. For Ryan, it was more than merely a tour of an office. It was something grander. For the first time in years, Jonathan sensed he had the chance to genuinely impact someone's life. Not by means of wealth, not via commerce, but through something far more intimate. The sound of a knock at the door interrupted his reverie. Laura, his assistant, glanced in. "Your visitors have arrived." Jonathan adjusted his stance, carefully eliminating the unseen creases in his suit. "Submit them now." The door swung open, and Ryan stepped inside, his eyes instantly growing wide at the vastness of the office. He emitted a sharp whistle. This location is remarkably expansive. Emily trailed just behind, a hint of apprehension flickering across her face, yet she concealed it with a courteous smile. Jonathan reciprocated the gesture, inviting them to enter. "Welcome to my realm," he remarked, sweeping his hand to encompass the space. Ryan immediately began to explore, his small fingers gliding along the smooth edges of Jonathan's sleek black desk, while his eyes darted over the towering bookshelves and the expansive windows that framed the cityscape beyond. "You can see everything from here," he exclaimed, pressing his face against the glass. "It feels as though you're soaring above everything, embracing the heights of existence." Jonathan let out a soft laugh. "There are days when it certainly seems that way." He focused his gaze on Emily. "It's wonderful to encounter you once more." She gave a slight nod. "We appreciate the invitation. I couldn't tell if you were being genuine." Jonathan offered a slight shrug. "I only express what I truly believe." Ryan averted his gaze from the window, a spark of intrigue illuminating his expression. "What activities occupy your time in this space throughout the day? Is it really just about sitting at that large desk and signing documents?" Jonathan chuckled heartily. "Not quite. Come closer. I have something to reveal to you." He guided Ryan to the conference table, where an array of skyscraper and building models was meticulously displayed. "Here are a few of the projects we've undertaken throughout the years. When embarking on a new construction project, we meticulously craft every detail from the foundation, akin to the work of an architect, yet on a grander scale." Ryan traced his fingers along one of the models, captivated by its details. "Did you create these?" "We nurture them, strategize around them, and transform them into reality. There are many elements at play, but ultimately we craft something enduring." Jonathan bent forward a bit, similar to how NASA engineers strategize for a space mission. Ryan's expression radiated with enthusiasm. "That's incredibly fascinating. Is it ever within your power to determine the placement of buildings?" "At times," Jonathan remarked. "Much of it revolves around discovering the appropriate setting and the meaningful intent. Much like astronauts, who don't merely venture into space, they must possess a clear understanding of their destination and the purpose behind it." Emily observed the interaction, a subtle smile of pride tugging at the edges of her mouth. She had never witnessed Ryan this absorbed in anything beyond the realms of space and science. Jonathan's approach to explaining things resonated with Ryan, showcasing a rare instance of an adult genuinely investing time in fostering a child's curiosity. Jonathan cast a sidelong look at Emily, taking in the way she watched her son with keen interest. He abruptly understood the immense burden she bore in solitude, the countless sacrifices she made to provide Ryan with every possible chance. And yet, despite the challenges, she had always ensured he felt valued. The thought was one that brought a sense of humility. "Have you ever sensed that you're not fully experiencing everything life has to offer?" Ryan abruptly inquired, glancing up at Jonathan. Jonathan's brow furrowed ever so slightly. "Could you clarify what you mean?" Ryan waved his hand to indicate the surroundings of the office. "It seems you're constantly up here, navigating significant choices. Have you ever found yourself longing for a change?" Jonathan found himself momentarily stunned by the inquiry. He had never been posed that question, neither by his peers, nor by his companions, nor even by his own thoughts. For years, he pursued success relentlessly, ascending to greater heights. Yet had he ever paused to reflect on whether this was genuinely his desire? He released a deep breath and offered the truest response he could muster. "At times, in my youth, I believed that attaining the pinnacle was the only thing of significance." He glanced at Ryan and then shifted his gaze to Emily. "I'm beginning to understand that the individuals you encounter throughout your journey may hold greater significance than the end goal." Ryan nodded, conveying an understanding that seemed beyond the grasp of any typical 10-year-old. "That is quite logical." Jonathan beamed with delight. "What about you? Continuing to envision the cosmos?" Ryan's expression brightened. "Absolutely. My ambition is to be the pioneer who sets foot on Mars." Jonathan smiled broadly. It's time to begin your preparations without delay. Grand aspirations require substantial dedication. He took a moment before continuing. If you're truly committed, I can connect you with some individuals involved in space programs. Perhaps it could lead you to a mentorship opportunity. Ryan's jaw nearly hit the floor. Is that so? Is that so? Emily's breath caught in her throat. After years of struggle to provide Ryan with the best, an unexpected opportunity appeared before her, one she had never dared to dream of. Her heart brimmed with gratitude, yet beneath that warmth lingered a flicker of hesitation. Was this something she could rely on? Was Jonathan trustworthy? Jonathan observed the subtle shift in her expression and spoke gently.
No hables, Emily.
Simply guiding a talented young mind toward achieving his aspirations. She locked eyes with him, probing for any hint of dishonesty. However, there was nothing. For the first time, she permitted herself to entertain the thought that perhaps, just perhaps, this was one of those exceptional instances where kindness existed without any hidden strings attached. Ryan smiled brightly at her. Mother, is it possible for me to? Emily sensed a constriction in her chest, yet she gave a nod. Absolutely, my dear. Jonathan reached out his hand toward Ryan. It seems we have reached an agreement. Ryan enthusiastically shook it, his tiny fingers clutching firmly. Jonathan beamed with delight. He had constructed his whole empire through negotiations, yet this was the first that genuinely resonated with significance. As Emily and Ryan departed from the office that day, Jonathan reclined in his chair, gazing out at the city once more. Yet, on this occasion, the perspective seemed altered. The skyline remained unchanged, the structures steadfast. Yet an internal transformation had taken place within him. For the first time in ages, he sensed a newfound clarity in his perception. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Jonathan sat in his office the following morning, gazing at the city skyline with renewed insight. The exchange with Ryan and Emily had stayed with him far longer than he anticipated. After decades of constructing an empire and amassing immeasurable wealth, he found himself momentarily halted by a simple question from a 10-year-old boy. Did he ever feel like he was missing out? It consumed his thoughts, an unrelenting presence in his mind. The reality was, Jonathan had devoted countless years in pursuit of success, never granting himself the opportunity to genuinely contemplate. His upbringing had diverged from Ryan's, yet in certain aspects, parallels could be drawn. Once, he had been a dreamer as well. He was raised in a humble household in Queens, nurtured by a single mother who juggled 2 jobs to ensure there was always food on the table. In contrast to Ryan, he lacked a supporter to uplift his aspirations. Instead, he had been compelled to forge ahead alone, resolute in his vow to never experience helplessness again. That unwavering resolve had driven his achievements, yet along the way, he had overlooked what truly counted. Later that day, Jonathan lifted the receiver and dialed a number belonging to one of his connections at NASA. He possessed a network that spanned far and wide, and for the first time, he felt compelled to leverage it for a purpose that truly mattered. Following a series of calls and a bit of maneuvering, he successfully orchestrated something extraordinary. A personal excursion at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where Ryan can engage with actual astronauts and engineers. Once everything was arranged, he sent Emily a message containing the details. He somewhat anticipated her to pause before probing into his intentions. Yet to his astonishment, she responded nearly immediately. Your efforts were not necessary, yet I truly appreciate it. A week later, Jonathan found himself aboard a flight to Florida, an endeavor he wouldn't typically undertake for just any meeting. However, this was no ordinary meeting. Upon arriving at the airport, he immediately recognized Emily and Ryan, who were waiting for him as planned. Ryan was brimming with enthusiasm, his gaze sparkling with curiosity as he absorbed the fresh environment. Emily appeared a bit more subdued, yet a glimmer of gratitude shone in her gaze. I can hardly wrap my head around this, Ryan exclaimed, clutching his backpack with a firm grip. Am I truly going to meet astronauts? Jonathan beamed with delight. Not merely encounter them. You will traverse the very corridors where training takes place, witness the authentic control rooms, and even have the opportunity to handle genuine space equipment. Ryan's jaw nearly dropped in astonishment. Today is truly remarkable. Emily chuckled gently. You haven't laid your eyes on it yet. Upon arriving at the Kennedy Space Center, Ryan's excitement soared to new heights. He dashed forward, gesturing excitedly at everything. The colossal rockets, the exhibits that celebrated the history of space, the enormous screens that showcased past missions. Jonathan observed him, experiencing a strange yet satisfying sense of completion. He had never experienced this sensation from money before. A tour guide welcomed them, ushering them through exclusive areas that remained unseen by the majority of visitors. Ryan paid close attention, taking in each word with care. Upon entering the room designated for astronaut training in zero gravity, his eyes grew wide with wonder. One day, I will be here training, he declared with unwavering confidence. Jonathan shared a fleeting look with Emily, her smile gentle and warm. For years, she had carefully tended to Ryan's aspirations, and now, at long last, they were blossoming into something tangible. They were transforming into potentialities. As the day unfolded, Ryan encountered engineers, scientists, and even an astronaut who had journeyed to the International Space Station. He posed his questions with a fervor that suggested he had been anticipating this moment for an eternity. What do you think is the most terrifying aspect of venturing into space? He inquired of one of the astronauts. The man let out a soft laugh. To be frank, the unveiling. The initial sensation of the engine's thunderous roar hits you, and in that instant, you comprehend that you are departing from Earth. However, following that, it becomes truly remarkable. Drifting through the cosmos, gazing upon our world below, it transforms you. Ryan nodded, utterly captivated. One day, I aspire to gaze upon Earth from the vastness of space. Jonathan observed Ryan as he took in every detail, understanding that this boy wasn't merely captivated by space. He was destined for it. He possessed an unwavering enthusiasm, an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and above all, a relentless drive. Jonathan was determined that Ryan would seize every chance available to turn his dream into a reality. Later that evening, as they settled into a cozy cafe close to their hotel, Ryan was still brimming with excitement. He was relentless in recounting all that he had witnessed, reliving each moment vividly in his mind. Jonathan and Emily were entranced, each drawn in by his infectious passion. This day has been nothing short of extraordinary, Ryan finally exclaimed, his voice brimming with unadulterated happiness. I'm at a loss for words to express my gratitude, Mr. Jonathan. Jonathan sensed a change stirring within him. There's no need for gratitude, Ryan, but I ask you to make me one promise. Ryan nodded with enthusiasm. Everything. Always hold on to your dreams, Jonathan advised. Regardless of the challenges you face or the naysayers around you, persist and push forward. Ryan smiled broadly.
Y assure you.
Emily gazed at Jonathan, her face a mask of mystery. For the first time, she perceived something beyond merely a prosperous entrepreneur. She observed a man who, in spite of his affluence, was on a quest for something more profound. In that instant, she understood that he had discovered it, not within the confines of boardrooms or towering skyscrapers, but in a young boy brimming with grand aspirations. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Jonathan sat in his office back in New York, gazing at the city skyline, yet this time the towering buildings lacked their usual allure. The journey to Florida had transformed something within him. He kept revisiting those moments, the way Ryan's eyes sparkled when he interacted with the space equipment, the way he posed questions filled with wonder, and the way Emily gazed at her son, brimming with pride. Years had passed since Jonathan had experienced a sense of genuine happiness like that. His existence had consistently revolved around figures, gains, and plans. Yet for the first time, he understood the profound emptiness of it all when juxtaposed with the pure delight of witnessing a child's dream come to life. He devoted so much of his life to pursuing financial success that he overlooked the one thing that genuinely mattered, human connection. A sudden knock on the door interrupted his reverie. His assistant, a keen and capable woman named Lisa, entered with a look of concern. "Sir, your schedule is packed with meetings throughout the day. The board is eager to delve into the new expansion deal, while the investors are anticipating an update on the quarterly earnings." Jonathan let out a weary sigh, his fingers pressing against his temples. Only a week prior, these gatherings would have taken precedence for him. But now they seemed utterly draining. He suggested rescheduling the non-urgent ones, surprising even himself. "Let's reschedule the board meeting for tomorrow." Lisa arched an eyebrow yet gave a nod of agreement. "Got it." She paused briefly before inquiring, "Is everything all right, sir?" Jonathan pondered over it. Is he all right? He felt uncertain. Yet what he understood was that, after many years, he found himself questioning everything for the first time. "I'm fine," he remarked, contemplating a few ideas. Once she departed, he reclined in his chair, his thoughts wandering to Emily. Since the trip, he had remained silent, yet thoughts of her lingered in his mind ceaselessly. She stood apart from the women he typically encountered, exuding strength, independence, and a total disinterest in his riches. She had crafted a life for herself and Ryan independently, and he admired that strength. He caught himself reaching for his phone before he could rein in the impulse. After a brief pause, he began to compose a message. "I trust you and Ryan are both doing well. We should reconnect soon." He gazed at the message, weighing the decision of whether to hit send. At last, he pressed send and placed his phone aside. An hour later, while he was poring over some reports, his phone buzzed to life. It was Emily. "Everything is fine. Ryan keeps going on and on about the trip. He keeps insisting that one day he'll take you aboard his spaceship." Jonathan let out a soft laugh, amused by his own thoughts. "I will ensure he follows through on that promise." Moments later, another message appeared. "Are you interested in joining us for dinner this weekend?" Jonathan gazed at the screen, a surprising warmth enveloping him. "I would be delighted to." On that Saturday, Jonathan stood outside a quaint yet inviting apartment in Brooklyn. It was a stark contrast to the opulent penthouses he was accustomed to, yet there was an authenticity about it that resonated deeply. He rapped on the door, and moments later, Ryan flung it open, beaming widely. "Mr. Jonathan, you arrived." Jonathan beamed with delight. "Absolutely. I wouldn't dream of missing it." Ryan guided him into the house, where Emily was wrapping up her tasks in the kitchen. The apartment, though compact, radiated a cozy charm. The walls were adorned with pictures, bookshelves brimming with beloved novels, and a subtle aroma of something delightful wafted through the air. It was a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environments Jonathan was accustomed to. Yet he found a surprising sense of comfort here that he hadn't experienced in his own home. Emily pivoted, drying her hands on a towel. "I trust you're ready for a feast. I crafted a delightful lasagna." Jonathan beamed. "That sounds absolutely ideal." They settled at the cozy dining table, and for the first time in ages, Jonathan felt a warmth he hadn't recognized he longed for. Family dinner. The air was filled with joy, tales shared, and the soothing melody of dishes gently clinking together. Ryan enthusiastically shared his thoughts on school, space, and the dreams he had for his future. Jonathan was utterly enchanted, not by corporate negotiations or financial trends, but by the pure delight of embracing the here and now. After dinner, Ryan retrieved a notebook brimming with illustrations of rockets and celestial bodies. "Listen, Mr. Jonathan, I've been crafting my own spaceship design." Jonathan leaned in, clearly captivated. "This is amazing, Ryan. You truly have a gift for this." Ryan radiated joy. "Is that truly what you believe?" "I know," Jonathan said. "And if you ever need assistance in turning your dreams into reality, you can rely on me." Emily observed the interaction silently, a mysterious expression lingering in her gaze. As Ryan headed off to brush his teeth before settling in for the night, she directed her attention to Jonathan. "What is the reason behind your actions?" she inquired gently. "A person like you possesses it all. What brings you to spend your time with us?" Jonathan paused, sifting through his thoughts for the perfect expression. At last, he let out a deep sigh. For the first time in years, I truly feel alive. Emily maintained his gaze for an extended moment before giving a nod. Indeed, Ryan is fortunate to have you supporting him. Jonathan gave a slight shake of his head. I believe I am the fortunate one. As he departed that evening, strolling through the serene streets of Brooklyn, Jonathan came to a profound realization. He had devoted years to the notion that success hinged on power, influence, and wealth. Yet perhaps, just perhaps, genuine success was rooted in something far more straightforward. Perhaps it revolved around those who brought meaning to existence. Before moving on, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking, and sharing it with your friends. Jonathan eagerly anticipated his weekends with Ryan and Emily, cherishing those moments above all else in his life. The era of perpetual board meetings and high-stakes business negotiations remained very much alive. Yet, they no longer devoured him as they once did. Instead, he found his mind wandering to Ryan's spaceship designs during lunch breaks, sending texts to Emily to check in on her day, and dreaming up small surprises for their time together. This attachment was peculiar, yet it felt undeniably right. It seemed genuine. One evening, as he lingered in his office, fixated on yet another report detailing quarterly earnings, his phone vibrated. A message arrived from Emily. Next Friday, Ryan is set to participate in a significant school event. He can't stop discussing it. He would be thrilled if you could join. Jonathan smiled, a strange warmth blossoming within him. He answered without a moment's pause. I wouldn't miss it for anything. On the upcoming Friday, Jonathan departed from work ahead of schedule for the first time in many years. His driver navigated to Ryan's school in Queens, a humble yet well-maintained structure alive with the vibrant energy of eager children. Upon entering, clad in his signature sharp suit, he sensed a hint of discomfort amidst the casually attired parents. However, the instant he caught sight of Ryan enthusiastically waving from across the room, all his uncertainties vanished. Mr. Jonathan, you've accomplished it. Ryan radiated joy as he dashed toward him. Jonathan knelt, playfully tousling the boy's hair. Absolutely, I did. Today is the moment you've been waiting for. Emily lingered close by, her smile radiating warmth. Tonight, she appeared transformed, exuding a sense of ease and joy. She shared with him the challenges of navigating life as a single mother, the constant duties that weighed on her, and the solitude that occasionally settled in. Jonathan appreciated her resilience. Yet this evening, she wasn't shouldering it all by herself. The occasion was a science fair, and Ryan had dedicated weeks to perfecting his project, a small-scale rocket model. As they approached his display, Jonathan experienced a peculiar sense of pride, as if Ryan's achievements were a reflection of his own. The project stood out, filled with intricate equations and diagrams that surpassed the comprehension of most children his age. Several other parents paused to appreciate it, and Ryan reveled in the spotlight. Mr. Jonathan offered me some ideas, he stated with pride. Jonathan let out a soft laugh. Ryan put in all the effort. I simply absorbed the sounds. As the judges made their rounds, Jonathan discovered a surprising delight in the evening that exceeded his expectations. He engaged with fellow parents, responded to inquisitive children who recognized him from magazine covers, and for the first time, he perceived himself not merely as a businessman but as someone capable of truly impacting a child's life. Upon Ryan clinching first place in his category, the boy was practically bursting with joy. He dashed into Jonathan's embrace, wrapping his arms around him with fervor. We accomplished it. Jonathan chuckled as he embraced him in return. You accomplished it, kid. I'm simply here to join in the festivities. Following the event, Emily extended an invitation for him to accompany them to a quaint ice cream shop close by. In a cozy corner booth, Ryan animatedly shared his dreams of constructing a genuine rocket someday. Jonathan absorbed every word, affirming with nods as Ryan shared his vision. And when I venture into space, I'll bring you and Mom along, Ryan proclaimed, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Jonathan beamed with delight. That seems like an incredible adventure. As they strolled back to Emily's apartment, Ryan clasping both their hands, Jonathan sensed a change stirring within him. This was more than a fleeting reprieve from his intense reality. This was something he yearned to cling to. Yet, a part of him was aware that his existence and Emily's were galaxies away from each other. He had constructed a vast empire, while she had created a warm and inviting home. Is it possible for those two realms to genuinely coexist? Later that night, after Ryan had settled into sleep, Jonathan and Emily found themselves on the cozy balcony of her apartment, enjoying cups of tea. The distant city lights shimmered softly, and for a fleeting moment, a sense of tranquility enveloped everything. Emily cast a sidelong glance at him, her face a mask of inscrutability. When I first encountered you, I assumed you were merely another affluent individual residing in a realm entirely separate from ours, she confessed. However, you don't align with my expectations. Jonathan let out a soft laugh. What were your expectations? She gave a slight shrug. A person indifferent to the situation. A person who vows something and then vanishes into thin air. She regarded him, her eyes probing. Yet you remain present. He released a breath, placing his cup on the table. For the simple reason that I desire to be. They remained quiet for a time, the unsaid thoughts hanging in the air around them. At last, Emily spoke once more, her voice gentler this time. Ryan holds you in the highest regard. He holds you in high regard. Jonathan gave a slight nod. He holds significant importance to me as well. She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes, before inquiring, and what about me? Jonathan faced her, locking eyes with hers. For years, his existence revolved around mastery, deliberate choices, and tactical maneuvers. Yet, this was an entirely different experience. It transcended mere logic or business considerations. It was about what resonated deeply. In that instant, certainty enveloped his thoughts. He extended his hand, weaving his fingers through hers. Your significance is greater than you realize. Emily beamed, her fingers wrapping softly around his. Perhaps, with a bit of collaboration, we can unravel this mystery together. As Jonathan sat there, hand in hand with a woman who had transformed his outlook on life, he recognized that for the first time in years, he wasn't pursuing success. He had already discovered it. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Jonathan discovered he was dedicating more hours to Queens than he ever had in the past. In the towering office overlooking Manhattan, surrounded by the gravity of boardroom discussions and the weight of billion-dollar transactions, everything felt remote when he was with Ryan and Emily. Peculiar transformation unfolded, a sensation that awakened a vitality within him that had long been dormant. He began collecting Ryan from school whenever he was free, bringing him to the park and assisting him with his homework. Ryan possessed a keen intellect, perpetually inquisitive, forever probing with questions, and Jonathan relished the opportunity to match his pace. Emily, in contrast, presented a unique set of challenges. She was self-sufficient, accustomed to managing everything by herself, and it required time for her to realize that Jonathan truly wished to support them both. One evening, as they nestled in her small yet inviting living room, Emily regarded him with a contemplative gaze. You really don't need to go through all this, you know, she said gently. Ryan has a deep affection for you. Your efforts on his behalf have surpassed all my expectations. Jonathan placed his coffee cup on the table and locked eyes with her. I'm engaging in this because I choose to. I desire to. He paused before adding, and it's not solely for Ryan. It's meant for you as well. She let out a breath, glancing aside for a brief moment before giving a nod. It's simply difficult to accept. Individuals don't simply remain present. Jonathan extended his hand, enveloping hers with a tender grip. I certainly do. With each passing week, their connection deepened. Jonathan's life, previously dominated by high-priced attire and boardroom discussions, now embraced school functions, home-cooked meals, and cozy movie nights on Emily's sofa. Yet, not all those around him grasped the depth of his journey. His business partners exchanged glances of surprise when he departed from meetings prematurely. Rumors began to swirl regarding his regular trips to Queens. Even his longtime assistant subtly pointed out that he was overlooking important networking opportunities. Jonathan was indifferent. One evening, as he enjoyed dinner with Emily and Ryan, his phone suddenly rang. It was Richard, one of his longest-standing colleagues and the nearest thing he had to a companion in the corporate realm. Jonathan ventured outdoors to answer the call. "You've been falling behind," Richard stated bluntly. "Overlooking gatherings, bypassing occasions. Questions are being posed by investors." Jonathan let out a heavy sigh, resting against the railing of Emily's quaint balcony. "I'm managing it all on my own. The company is doing well." "Indeed, for the time being," Richard remarked. "Yet, eyes are upon us. They're curious about what could possibly be so significant that you keep darting off to Queens." Jonathan experienced a brief surge of annoyance. "It's not their concern." Richard let out a deep breath. "I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't enjoy your life. However, this doesn't reflect who you truly are. You created a legacy, Jonathan. Are you truly prepared to toss everything aside for this?" "What for?" Jonathan interjected abruptly. "For a child who admires me? For a woman who truly brings me joy? Do you believe that's an error?" Richard paused for a moment, then said, "Just be cautious. The realm you inhabit offers no mercy for diversions." Jonathan concluded the conversation, his thoughts swirling. Was he truly allowing things to slip away? He sensed no loss of control. At last, he truly sensed the essence of existence. Yet uncertainty hovered in the recesses of his thoughts. The following morning, he entered his office with a resolute spirit, ready to demonstrate his ability to navigate both realms successfully. He navigated through meetings, addressed investor concerns, and successfully closed a significant deal. Yet, as the hours unfolded, he sensed the burden of it all bearing heavily upon him. As evening approached, he found himself utterly drained. While he lingered in his office, gazing at the city skyline, his phone vibrated. A snapshot featuring Emily, with Ryan beaming proudly beside his drawing of a rocket. "Today felt incomplete without you. I trust you are managing well." Jonathan let out a breath, his fingers running through his hair. He felt their absence as well, beyond what he could express. He reached for his phone and sent a response. "Looking forward to our meeting tomorrow." That weekend, he brought Ryan to the Museum of Natural History. The boy was utterly captivated, bombarding everyone with a flurry of questions about the exhibits. As they strolled through the corridors, Ryan abruptly glanced at Jonathan, his face etched with seriousness. "Will you be here for eternity?" Jonathan halted, taken by surprise. "Could you clarify what you mean?" Ryan gave a nonchalant shrug. "Mom says that at times individuals may depart, regardless of their desires." Jonathan knelt, meeting his gaze directly. "I'm here to stay, my friend." Ryan observed him intently for a moment before giving a nod of understanding. "Understood. Your trust in me is appreciated." That evening, as Jonathan accompanied Emily to her doorstep, she paused momentarily before speaking. "I understand this isn't simple for you." He grinned. "It is truly worthwhile." She bit her lip, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. "Yet, for what duration? The realms we inhabit, they diverge." Jonathan clasped her hands in his own. "Perhaps they need not be." Before moving on to the next segment, kindly subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. Jonathan lingered at the boundary of the playground in Queens, observing as Ryan dashed across the green expanse with a cluster of friends. The boys' laughter echoed, unrestrained and vibrant with joy. Emily perched on a nearby bench, cradling a cup of coffee, her gaze darting between Jonathan and her son. For months, she had lingered in uncertainty, pondering if someone like Jonathan, with his riches, influence, and a lifestyle so distinct from her own, could genuinely belong in their realm. Yet, as she observed him standing there in jeans rather than a suit, appearing more comfortable in this setting than he ever did in his Manhattan office, the answer became clear to her. He was already part of it. Jonathan had made a decision, one that had exacted a toll on him in ways he had not foreseen. The corporate landscape moved forward without pausing for anyone. Frustration mounted among investors, agreements collapsed, and the press buzzed with theories regarding his disappearance. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of peace, free from any regrets. After years of constructing an empire, he came to the profound realization that true happiness was not nestled within towering skyscrapers or lucrative billion-dollar transactions. It was in the subtle instances, the way Ryan gazed up at him, the way Emily's smile blossomed when she believed no one was observing. He had once dreaded the thought of losing control, yet now he realized that surrendering had bestowed upon him more than he had ever envisioned. As he approached Emily, she glanced up, her expression gentle. "You know," she said, "I used to believe that life had to follow a specific path, that individuals such as yourself and those like me couldn't coexist in the same realm." Jonathan settled next to her, their shoulders gently touching. "What comes next?" She offered a smile, her eyes briefly meeting Ryan's. "I've come to realize that life has a way of throwing unexpected twists your way." He extended his hand toward hers, cradling it with tenderness. "This is what I desire, Emily. I desire us." She remained close. Instead, she leaned into him, releasing a breath she had been holding for far too long. "So hold on tight and never release." Ryan dashed toward them, panting and beaming. "Could we possibly indulge in some ice cream?" Jonathan let out a soft laugh, tousling his hair playfully. "Absolutely, my friend." As they strolled down the street hand in hand, Jonathan experienced a buoyancy he hadn't felt in years. He devoted his life to pursuing success, only to come to the profound understanding that genuine wealth lay not in figures, but in the relationships that enriched existence. In that moment, he realized he had discovered the very place that felt like home. Before proceeding, kindly subscribe to our channel, like our content, and share it with your friends.